Yes, great to be here. Thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be sharing my ideas and my thoughts about the Global Sentiment Survey and how learning and development is changing in our field. I think it's the fastest that it's changed since I started training in the mid-1980s. So I've been asked to confirm my speaking language by there we go, by Zoom. I'm confirming I am speaking English. So I'm very happy to share with you my ideas about what's happening with the world of learning and development. We're going to take 20 minutes to look at how things are changing, and they're changing dramatically. Now, I've chaired conferences for a long time, 25 years at least. Everyone always says things are changing, but seriously, this time, they really are changing. It's not just AI, but that's the big driver right now. I want to talk about my research and how it shows, I think, that there was a big shock in L&D last year about training and about AI. I think that's changed, but I still think we're not doing the right things. Let's have a look and let me see your thoughts as well. So I'm going to share my slides and we'll begin looking at how things are changing in learning and development. So by the way, these slides, of course, are available afterwards, and if you, they'll be sent out or they'll be available from FiAD. And of course, I'll give my presentation to anybody who links in with me. Just link in with me and ask me, and I'll send them to you as well. So please don't worry if you miss something. For me, sorry, I need to start off by saying thank you to FiAD, who are one of the partners who make it possible to get the data in for my research. And I also need to thank the other organizations which were sponsors or major media partners. And here they are. Of course, I need to say that before every presentation. As I say, we've got 15 to 20 minutes, so I'll go quite quickly here, but I hope clearly. Here's the question I always ask people in my survey each year, and I always ask when I'm doing presentations. You don't have to answer this, but I'd just like you to think about it. If you want to write in the chat, fantastic, but you don't have to. What's your biggest learning and development challenge in 2025? Just think about this, please, for a moment. For me, there is one answer, and I'm going to share that with you now because you've had a chance to think about it. Your answer might be one of many things, and I'll show you some data later on. But for me, the big challenge for learning and development this year is being relevant. When I say this, what I mean is that we must have an answer. When somebody asks the question, why you, we must have an answer that says, I'm relevant, I'm doing a good job because whatever. But it should be about the value we add to the business. That's very clear at the moment, and I'll tell you about this in a second. And I think that this battle to be relevant, this battle to show the value that we have, means that we're now really on a fork in the road. We can choose to grow, to use technology like AI to do a lot more, or we can keep doing the things we've always done. But if we do what we've always done, there's a real risk that we will fade away and will become less important. When people think about learning and development and they think about training, I'm afraid that this is what they think about. This is very similar to the school that I went to when I was growing up. in the 1970s, and it changed a bit for my kids, but still the model that people have in their heads is, training is somebody stands at the end of the room and they deliver content to people. And there's a good reason for that. For a long time, that's exactly what training meant. It's what learning and development meant. I started work in this field in 1987 as a trainer. Before that, I'd been a computer programmer. I started as a trainer. There were two things that we did. We created content and we delivered the content, and we did that through books and we did it through courses, and that was it. The landscape of what is possible now has changed enormously. Still, this is the model, that classroom model that most people have in their minds, whether it's an employer, whether it is a manager in the organization, whether it's the learning and development teams, often think the same thing. This is what we do. We deliver content. But we can do an awful lot more. So now we've shifted from just doing these things. So I'm just going to move this toolbar somewhere. There we go. From just doing these things to having a whole lot more things that we can do. So as well as the content and the delivery, there's a focus in many organizations on looking at data and skills. There's a real focus on direct support of performance, and also what happens in the community of employees. Let me look at what sort of things we can do with those, with each of these different categories of work. We can, sorry, cursor is not responding to my clicking. That's better. There's a lot of things that we can do now going beyond the content side of things. So if I talk to organizations today, and I talk to a lot of organizations that are doing interesting things, as well as the creation of content and the delivery of it, the course design, people are interested in personalization. They're interested in skills-based talent management, in simulation tools and mentoring and coaching tools, very possible with AI. They're also interested often in collaboration to learn from each other, and this idea of tacit knowledge. In other words, finding the stuff that's in people's heads and bringing it to the rest of the organization. All of these things are now ways of working in learning development that we should be looking at, but I think too often we are still focused on that 1987 model of creating and delivering content. So let me talk you through my global sentiment survey. I asked two key questions. One is, what will be hot in workplace learning and development? What are people excited about? And the other one is, what's your big challenge for the coming year? That was the question that I asked you earlier. Now, let's look at that second question first. And I'm going to come back at the end of all this, back to this circle of possibilities of learning and development, because I think the survey shows us what we're thinking, but it also shows us that we're not really doing enough. So we asked this question: what's your biggest learning and development challenge? This year, nearly, well, 89% of people answered the question, and almost 30,000 words were written in response to the question. To give you an idea, that means it's about the length of these two books, Animal Farm or Alice in Wonderland. So it can be a dystopia or a fantasy. But anyway, I have to read through 29,000 words of people's unhappiness about the challenges they face at work. In 2024, I want to share with you what happened, because this is a free text answer. You can type as many words as you want. In 2024, 60 people just pressed 3 keys on their keyboard: A, I, return. What was their biggest challenge? Their challenge was AI, and that was all they wrote, 60 people. Now, what this tells me is that these people were just in shock. It's like, I don't understand AI, help me. In 2025, this year's survey, only 3 people did that. And we wrote more words this year than last year or any year before it. So people were writing about AI in much more detail. They were saying, I have difficulty, my challenge is AI because money, because resources, because I don't understand it, whatever. But they weren't just saying AI. So I think in 2024, we had a shock. In 2025, people came back and started to realize what was important. Okay, so what was important to them? If we look at the other challenges that people wrote about, I take all those 29,000 words and I put them into 9 possible categories. I want to look at 3 of the categories that I put those words into. And those categories are the resources and budget category, technology and skills, strategy and talent. The question, remember, is what's your biggest challenge? So I'm looking for keywords, key ideas that put these comments in these categories. Resources, budget and workload is not the most popular category. In fact, it's probably the category which is, I think, ranked 8th or 7th amongst all those 9 categories. But what's interesting about it is that each year, it's the only category which each year for the past 4 years has increased the number of people saying that they think their biggest problem is the resources, the budget to do the job. Technology, it won't surprise you, with technology in 2024, it shot up because of AI and it came back slightly this year. So it was number 1. AI was on everybody's mind last year, and this year, skills, strategy, and talent, which wasn't number 1 last year, it came back to being number 1 this year. So all of this tells me, this idea about the challenges that people face, tell me that generally in the world, and by the way, 3,500 people answered this survey from 100 countries. So it's a pretty comprehensive survey. What this tells me is that people really are finding work difficult. They feel themselves more under pressure than ever. But the pressure has switched slightly from being about technology to being more about doing the job, meeting the strategy, delivering the skills and the talent required for the organization. That's the challenges. I'd like to look now at the other question that we ask on the survey, and that is, what will be hot next year? It will be no surprise to you to know that what will be hot, what people thought would be hot this year was, of course, artificial intelligence. Number 1 on my list of options that I give people, and this vote, over 22%, is the biggest vote we've ever had, and it's bigger than last year's vote of 21.5%. That's a huge vote, and much bigger than last year's. Over here on the right-hand side, you can see that how things have gone up or down in comparison with last year. Interestingly, this doesn't show us how much things went up or down. So let's have a look at that, because the amount that things go up and down turns out to be quite important. So if we look at how votes changed this year in comparison with last year, you can see that at the bottom of this list, a lot of the votes, a lot of the options had fewer votes this year. People were less interested in them. At the top, you'd expect that triangle shape to be mirrored. You'd expect the top to look something like this, but it doesn't. This is very strange. At the top, what happens is that there is one option here, personalization, which goes up a small amount here. And the others all jump up by at least 1%. It's like the world is saying, this is important, and nothing else is. One of those things is artificial intelligence. But what about all the other things? The other things on this list that people thought were important were showing value, consulting more deeply with the business, and performance support. And these are 3 things which have always worked very closely together in the survey. These are the things which people associate with value. I think the idea is, well, we'll consult with the business, we'll do something that supports performance, and then we will show the results. This emphasis for me of the audience, and again, I say it's 3,500 people from 100 countries. This group of people is clearly saying, I don't care about anything else on this as much as I care about showing the value that I give. To me, the reason for that is quite clear. People, and it's the people I've spoken to, are afraid of losing their jobs. They're afraid that AI is going to take away what they do. Maybe there are other reasons for it, but speaking to people, I get a very strong impression, and they tell me explicitly sometimes, I'm afraid of my job. So if that's the case, if people are understanding AI better, they're not shocked by it, they're writing about the challenges they have with it in more detail, and if they're focused on delivering value, how are people actually using AI in L&D? Let's have a look. So in conjunction with Eglebin Alskaita, my co-author, I produced 3 reports on the use of AI in learning development in the past, well, it's about slightly more than a 12-month period from November 23 to October 24, these 3 reports. And the reports look at how people are using AI. And there's one question in particular that we asked people in October 24 that I think is really important. And the question is, what do you see as the expected benefits of AI? It's not how are you using AI, it's what are the expected benefits. And this is like being a kid in a candy shop. You're going in, you can choose whatever you like from this list. All right, if we ask people that question, how do they respond? Well, this is how they respond. And by the way, there's going to be another survey coming out with the results in, I hope, September or October of this year. So we'll be able to compare the results. But here you can see that the thing that people expect to get the most from AI is more content faster. It doesn't matter all the other things that we've talked about that you can do with AI. People are talking about creating content faster. And for me, this is a profound problem. Go back to our wheel. All of the things on this wheel can be supported with AI. I have seen fantastic use of AI to give people simulation and coaching that enables them to do their job better, either training or when they're actually doing their job. I've seen great collaboration systems that put people together to learn from each other. I've seen great ways of sharing great information across the organization from people's heads. There are some fabulous skills-based talent management packages out there. People are doing a great job understanding the skills in the organization. And of course, there is some really exceptional work around personalization, but we've just seen how people are using AI. They're using it for content creation. Now, here's the problem with that. Anybody can create content with AI. You don't have to be a learning and development expert to do it. Maybe the content that other people create is not as good. But, you know, think about the schoolroom idea. The people who write the checks, the people who pay for learning and development, they are convinced that it's all a matter of putting data in front of people. Well, if somebody else can create that content fast, why would they bother with learning and development? I suggest that this is a really bad place to be, focusing our use of AI on content creation. There is so much else that we can do. I'd like to see us as a profession using AI for all the other things that we can do around here. And by the way, I know that many organizations already are. So if you're doing that, fantastic, kudos to you. we have this opportunity, just to wrap up now, we have this opportunity, we can take technology and we can use it to grow and to expand what we do. Or we can decide we're going to keep doing what we've always done and we will fade away, we will become less relevant, to go back to that word I used right at the beginning. Marshall Goldsmith, the coach, expresses this really well. He says, hey, look, what got you here, your great skills in creating content in learning and development, won't get you there. It won't move you up to the next level of impact, and it won't help you show value. What got you here won't get you there. I put it like this. We have a choice. So this is the conclusion to my report. We have a choice, and we must make it. We can have an influence or irrelevance. It's our choice. This is the report. I'm just going to drop the URL for this into the chat, which I don't seem to be able to do. Hang on. No, I can't drop the URL out. So if somebody could put the URL out, that would be great. And of course, I'd love to link in. I always say this is the end of a presentation, but I hope it is the beginning of a conversation. I firmly believe that this is a great time for learning and development. I wish I was in my 20s again and starting, because there's so much we can do. Maybe it's not possible, but I'm here to support you in what you're doing. So please link in with me if you can. And I look forward to supporting you in your journey in learning and development. Thank you so much.